Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Wow, I'm in a weird mood tonight. Today, we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Unlimited Patience. You don't want a woman working on your car? That's fine, but you're going to be waiting a long time. Let's jump right in. Many years ago, I worked at a car dealership. The attached service garage was small, and I was the only licensed mechanic. I would occasionally have issues with male customers. They would second guess my diagnosis, watch me while I worked on their cars from the bay door, double check my work in the parking lot, etc. I didn't deal with customers directly, and would often get my apprentice to pull cars in and out of the shop for me. This morning in particular, we were busy. The lot jockey and apprentice were occupied, helping wash cars for delivery and driving to a customer's house. The service advisor left a work order and keys at the parts counter, and I went out the front through the service to get the car. It was in for a service campaign, which was an update done with a scan tool. It takes about 10 minutes. The customer was planning on waiting and was sitting in service. When he saw me with his keys in my hand, he immediately stood up, alarmed. I was hustling, so I walked right by him and out the door. I missed the following conversation, according to the service advisor, also female. Who is that chick? Is she going to be working on my car? I don't want her working on my car. The other tech is out at the moment, so it's going to be quite a wait until someone else can look at your car. That's fine, I'll wait for a guy. I don't want that chick touching my car. Understood. The advisor comes to let me know, and I pull the car out and put the work order and keys back on the counter, nonplussed. Half an hour passes. The apprentice is still away, and I am happily working on something else, bringing other cars in and out. The customer is now watching each and every person who comes through the door. The high school co-op student comes in to get something signed. The customer's keys are still sitting on the desk. It's been about an hour now. Hey, why hasn't my car gone in yet? Can't you get this guy to do it? No, sorry, he's just a co-op student, so he's not allowed to drive the cars due to liability and insurance concerns. Just get someone else to bring the car in and he can do the work. This was supposed to take 10 minutes. Sorry, sir, he's just a high school student doing his co-op. He's not approved to perform warranty work. Only licensed techs and apprentices can do the recall. The car jockey returns. The advisor hands the car jockey a different set of keys, and he brings yet another car into the shop for me. The customer is becoming incensed. I've been sitting here for over an hour, and I've watched 5 cars go in before mine. The appointment was for 8 a.m. This is getting ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. At this point, he says that he literally doesn't care who does the recall, but that it has to be a guy. The service advisor starts listing off the names of the men who work in the dealership, then saying why they can't perform the recall. Well, there's Harmon, but he's just the car jockey. He doesn't know how to work on cars. Then there's Jeet, but he's about 17. I wouldn't want him doing the recall personally. I guess we could ask Mike, but Mike is the parts guy. He doesn't know how to use the scan tool. The detailers are men, but they know nothing about cars. The customer is fuming at this point and demands to talk to the service manager. The manager comes out of his office and guides the customer into the garage. He's pretty old school, lights up a cigarette standing at the end of my bay, and points at me. That's my best technician. Those guys take orders from her. You can either wait for her to finish what she's working on, and then you can ask if she's still willing to do your work, or you can take your car somewhere else. The guy was pretty shook up at this point, and he took his car and left, 2 hours after he'd first arrived. I don't think we ever saw him again, which was not much of a loss, all things considered. That manager in particular always stuck up for me and took my side. The service advisor has this very deadpan sense of humor. She knew full well it would easily be an hour before the apprentice would return from his errand, and that no one else could do the recall. This was not the first sexist we had encountered. Thanks for reading. You know, it might have just been the massive knob hanging off of this guy's forehead, making him not be able to see that she was the most qualified person there able to do this. Now you have to think, if the manager wanted to have a little bit more fun with this, he could have gone up to that person and said, well, you're a guy, fix it yourself, bye. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Fangor. I'm giving you useless information? Okay, enjoy your green hair. Let's jump right in. I used to sell pool and hot tub chemicals. A part of the job is testing customers' pool and hot tub water to see what chemicals they needed. If you don't take care of your pool or check it often, you need a lot of chemicals to fix the mess you've made, particularly if you use chlorine pucks. They generally have such a low pH level that it burns away at your heater coil and causes you to have copper in your water. Well, a couple years ago, a customer came up to me to test their pool water. It was a complete mess and it had a bunch of copper in it. This isn't the exact conversation because it was a while ago, but this was the main points. Yeah, the main issue is your pH is so low, it's making your chlorine less effective, and you have copper in your water. Yeah, just get me the stuff I need to fix it. I go and grab all the chemicals he needs and put it on the counter. How much is all of this going to cost? Around $250. I'm not paying that much. Is all of this really necessary? Yes, you won't be able to hold chlorine, and you need to get the copper out. If you oxidize copper with a shock, it's going to stain parts of your pool and can even tint your hair green if you have recently dyed blonde hair. My daughter's having a pool party next weekend, and I just want the pool to have chlorine for then. Yes, and you need all of this to make sure you're good to go. Can you just put everything away and only give me the chlorine? Fine, I'm not gonna argue, I don't work on commissions. Fast forward a couple days and the customer's wife came in. It was subtle, but you could tell her hair had a funny tint to it. She asked for all the chemicals that I recommended to her husband, and she paid with zero hesitation. The husband never came in ever again, and his wife took care of the pool from that moment forward. The next time the wife came in, it looked like her hair had been dyed the original blonde color she used to have. I'm guessing with treatments, re-dyeing, and all that wonderful stuff, she probably spent a pretty penny getting her hair back to its original color. Probably a lot more than the $250 that could have been spent in the first place. Our next story today comes to us from Christopher Kaiba. You want to deal with a man? Alright, so be it. Let's jump right in. Okay, so I run a smallish business with my mother, uncle, aunt, and occasionally brother and girlfriend. Fireworks, balloons, and various stuff, and decorations for events, weddings, funerals, other businesses, etc., etc. Small town, not crazy busy, but not swatting flies out of boredom. So guy walks in Monday, wants a huge balloon arch and some other designs, plus fireworks, plus some custom-made stickers for the coming Sunday for his wedding. My mom greets him, I was at the bank at the time, and asks him to elaborate on what he needs. He gets all smug and demands to speak to the man who is usually at the store, me, because a woman wouldn't understand the complexity of the order. Mind you, my mother is literally the backbone of the entire business. She makes the balloon designs, sets them up nice and pretty, arranges them, the whole shebang. So she tells him to come back tomorrow when I'll be in. I come back from the bank, she tells me the story and tells me to handle it, although she'd prefer if we didn't deal with the idiot at all. And so, malicious compliance time. Monday goes by, Tuesday comes, and I head to the shop. Dude walks in around 11 a.m. My mom nudges me to let me know he's the guy. I start with the whole, hey, welcome, what can we do for you, blah blah, and he starts telling me his complex order. I stop him, tell him I have to go to the bank, it's urgent, and he can talk with my mom what he needs, she will be more than able to help him. His face goes fully sour and asks when I'll be back. I tell him in 2 to 3 hours, give or take. He can either wait for me or come back tomorrow. He waits for an hour or so and leaves. Comes back Wednesday morning, same story. I have to meet our supplier, we'll be out for 2 to 3 hours. He waits again for the second day in a row. Thursday comes around, he walks in again. This time, I fully intend to listen to him, so I grab a pen and a paper and I'm ready to take notes. He asks for 3 of our simplest balloon designs, and the cheap ones at that, in 3 different colors, some basic fireworks, and asks if we can be at the wedding to set it up and light up the fireworks. After a certain level, fireworks must be lit by professionals with specific licenses, us. So I look him dead in the eye and let him know that I have absolutely no idea how to help him, seeing as the balloons and the fireworks are not my area of expertise, and he will have to defer to my mother. His face turns pale, He begrudgingly tells her all the same things he just told me. She writes it down and lets him know that he will be charged extra for the things he wants because we should have been told on Monday, and now we are going to have to spend all night making it. So it's going to be an extra 40%. The price tag for all the stuff was around $1,000. He starts losing it, refusing to pay that much for the things and the service. Thing is, nobody else does what we do, at least not anywhere close. So my mother very kindly lets him know that if he had told her what he needed on Monday, instead of waiting for me, he wouldn't have to pay the 40% extra. And if he wasn't going to book us on the spot, then the extra charge would climb as we would have even less time to fulfill his order. He obviously agrees because there was nothing else he could do, pays up, and leaves. We went to the wedding, did our job, got paid, and he was probably pissed as all hell the entire time. You have to think through this entire story that the biggest loser is somebody who's not even in the story. Can you imagine the bride in this case? Oh my gosh, what a poor woman. Oh, and OP, I just wanted to say, your mom is a badass. Our next story today comes to us from Godless Davis 0. Couldn't read at work but was allowed to write because it looked like I was doing something. Let's jump right in. When I was 19, I was a machine mechanic. I fixed automatic presses in a factory. My main job was to keep 2 and sometimes 4 machines running just as much as possible. When they were all running, I actually had very little to do. I could basically sit there and listen to the machines until one of them started acting up. I started bringing books to read to pass the 10 and 12-hour days. One day, the vice president of the company walks by and asks what I'm doing. I point at the 4 running machines and tell him that they are all running. He says I can't sit at my workbench and read. I should be doing something. I tell him that the machines are running, and until one breaks, there really isn't anything else to do. I already organized my tools and cleaned my work area. I just have to wait until something breaks. He says no reading. I was still bored, so I decided to write a story. I figured I could tell a story just as good as the next guy. I started writing instead of reading. Writing at my workbench apparently looked like some kind of work and was just fine. A year later, the company decides to move. The job would no longer be union, so I had the choice to move with the company without the union or go to college for retraining of some sort. I chose the retraining and took creative writing classes. Long story short, I now have a master's degree in English with creative writing focus. I've published several books and teach composition at a university for a crapload more money and usually for half a day, summers off. The vice president called me several times over the first 2 years to see if I would come back to work as a machine mechanic. I never even answered the phone when he called. I just let the answering machine get it every time. If he would have just let me read the crappy fiction I brought to work, I probably never would have thought about writing at all. I never would have gone to college, and I'd still be there waiting for the machines to break down. You know, a quick phone call to that boss to explain why you weren't coming back would have been great. You could just mention that I'm not coming back because you wouldn't let me read a book. I might even name a character after you now. Our next story today comes to us from Random Bloke. You want me to walk home? Fine, I will. Let's jump right in. Not really a long one, but something I remembered from my childhood. Not sure if other people experienced this or not, but when I was younger, around 10, I could be pretty annoying, as most kids are sometimes. Anytime I acted up in the car, my mom would fall back on her favorite line, "If you keep being annoying, you're walking home," and proceed to pull over to the curb, pretending to kick me out of the car. Mom was normally expecting me to crap myself and get back in line, as the thought of walking home far is pretty scary for a little kid. However, quite the contrary for me one day, since I started sensing this was BS after a few times of hearing this. The woman wouldn't let me walk to school 500 meters from my house by myself, let alone kilometers away from home. Anyway, at the sidewalk, I hop out of the backseat of the car and with the biggest crap-eating grin and gave my mom a wave goodbye from outside the passenger window. My mom's face just had a look of disappointment, knowing full well she just lost that battle. She asked me to get back in straight away and said she wasn't being serious. However, I had other plans. I was not going to let her off that easy and decided I would start walking home for a bit to rub some salt in the wounds. Now, what happened next was slightly unexpected, but oh well. So I started speed walking thinking I was the funniest guy ever, with my mom following right behind me. Well, some good Samaritan must have called the police because not too long into my victory walk home, a cop showed up. Now that I think about it, it may have just been a coincidence a police car drove down the street, as I'm pretty sure police response time is far longer than a couple of minutes. They pull over and start questioning my mom, with me now crying, which didn't help matters since I thought I was in big trouble. Hint, I was. It was just not a great situation at all, since it looked pretty much like a soon-to-be abduction. After a bit of time and quite a few viewers watching from their houses, the police figure out everything is fine, and I hop back in the car. My mom looked at me and said a kid-friendly version of, "You are effed when we get home," and then silence for the rest of the ride. I proceeded to be grounded for a week, which was probably fair in hindsight. She never said it again after that day, which was an absolute win in my book since it really annoyed me. The moral of the story is, don't pretend to drop your smart butt kid off at the curb when they act up in the car. You could have an interesting run-in with the police. One thing I've learned being a parent to 4 kids is that you never make a threat that you're not willing to follow through on. If you tell your kids, if you do this, I'm gonna do this, and you don't do that, then your kid learns that you just make idle threats and there are no real consequences to what they do. I think OP's mom learned their lesson in this case, and they did mention in a comment down below that their mother never made empty threats again. Thank you to all 5 OPs. Check them out at the links in the description down below. I thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.